AOC fired up the country with her speech. But the next day, Karoline Leavitt said one line, and suddenly, everyone went silent. There was a light morning haze over New York, but the energy in Union Square was cutting straight through the sky. The crowd was massive. Drones hovered above, cameras rolled from every angle. Then a young woman stepped onto the stage wearing a small pin on her black blazer. AOC. The second she grabbed the mic, the crowd went dead silent. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez began speaking in her signature passionate tone, her voice rising with each phrase. "We are living under an oligarchy," she said, "and we are here to put a stop to it." Applause erupted from the crowd. She continued, "Our country has become a playground for a handful of billionaires. Working Americans are being crushed in plain sight. But we're here today because we know we're not alone." In the back, media crews scrambled to go live with headlines like, "A historic moment." Some reporters were already calling it the beginning of a new people's movement. AOC scanned the crowd and raised her voice. "This isn't just a protest, this is a wake-up call." By the time she finished, Take Back America was already trending on social media. But while those images were playing on loop across TV screens, a very different scene was unfolding inside the White House press office. Karoline Leavitt had been at her desk since early morning. A thick stack of reports sat in front of her, red pen in hand. She watched the CNN broadcast with the volume low, carefully noting every word AOC said. A staffer walked in and said, "Social media is blowing up. They're calling AOC a hero." Karoline barely looked up. "Heroism isn't about speaking into a camera," she said quietly. "Real heroes don't shout. They solve." That afternoon, Karoline was preparing to go public with a response. The media was locked in on AOC's rally, but the White House was crafting something different, something calculated. This wasn't just a difference in political opinion. It was a clash of visions. One was raising her voice to get attention. The other was stepping into the spotlight, ready to remind people of the facts. And in this story, someone no one expected was about to step forward, with a message that could change the country's direction. AOC's speech in Denver absolutely blew up on social media. Phrases like "fight the oligarchy" and "they're destroying the country" were shared thousands of times by her supporters. Hashtags took off one after another. Hashtag power to the people, #end the greed, #AOC 2028. On the left, her speech was treated like a political manifesto. On the right, though, it landed like an ideological bomb. Over on Fox News, Sean Hannity called her remarks a direct attack on free markets, private property, and individual liberty. He added, "This goes beyond Bernie Sanders. This is radicalism, plain and simple." Tucker Carlson didn't hold back either. This woman isn't just challenging the system. She wants to rip it out at the roots. And her real target? It's not the state. It's the American people. But the real answer was coming from the White House. That night, Karoline Leavitt broke her silence. In a surprise press briefing, she stepped up to the podium holding a single-page statement. The room was dead quiet. She locked eyes with the cameras and began to speak. "America is a place where different ideas come together. But when those ideas start to tear this country apart, we can't stay silent." Then she addressed AOC directly. "Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, you're not fighting wealth. You're fighting freedom. You don't want to hand power to the people. You want to build your own political brand." Her words echoed through the press room. Some reporters shot straight to their phones, firing off tweets. Others just stared, nodding or raising eyebrows. The next day, the New York Times ran her remarks on the front page. Leavitt, AOC's target isn't the people, it's power. CNN and MSNBC called her tone aggressive and targeted, but inside the White House, her comments were met with approval. Republican strategists said it was the first time Karoline had taken on a national figure so directly and with that much bite. Some even whispered, she's positioning herself for 2028. Online, the hashtag #CarolineStrikesBack started trending. GOP voters loved it. They finally felt someone had clapped back at AOC with equal force and sharper strategy. But this wasn't just a back and forth between politicians. It was a full-on collision between two visions of America's future. One side wanted to tear down the system and rebuild from scratch. The other believed in fixing it by standing firm and building smarter. And now the country waited because this was no longer just about two women. It was about two ideologies going head to head. AOC's fiery words in Denver didn't just shake the room, they echoed across the entire country. But it was Karoline Leavitt's sharp response from the White House that truly turned up the heat. What started as a political back and forth between two women had now exploded into a full-blown cultural battle, one that millions of Americans felt deeply invested in. On social media, hashtags like #WorkingClassVoices and #Karoline Claps Back were trending side by side. On one end was AOC's loud challenge to the system, and on the other was Karoline's calm strength and strategic precision. From CNN to Fox, every network was breaking down this clash. Some analysts were already calling it a preview of future elections. One side framing itself as the voice of the people against the system, the other as the steady hand ready to rebuild and restore. But behind the scenes, the tension was even more intense. Democrat strategists privately admitted that Karoline's response was almost too calm, but lethal. That morning, the White House released an official statement directly addressing AOC's "billionaires are destroying the country" claim. The line that stood out? The ones who truly mislead the American people aren't the loudest voices. They're the ones who quietly dodge responsibility. Karoline had written that line herself. Later that same day, while reporters fired off questions at a press briefing, Karoline diffused the pressure with just one phrase. "Shouting doesn't solve problems. Working does." By evening, those 5 words were all over the news. But AOC wasn't backing down either. The very next day, she appeared on a New York radio show and fired back, calling Karoline a puppet who learned to speak fluent Washington at a young age. It was a bold jab, and it only made things worse. That afternoon, pro-Karoline marches were held in several Republican-heavy districts. In Ohio, one mother held a sign that read, "Karoline speaks for our kids." Back at Mar-a-Lago, Trump was quietly watching the whole thing unfold from his office. One of his advisors stepped in to find him glued to the screen, watching Karoline's speech. Without even looking away, Trump muttered, "She's not just a press secretary, she's the future of this party." That line was leaked the next morning, and even that single quote sparked a new political wave. At this point, the story wasn't just about AOC versus Karoline. It had become the rise of a political force no one saw coming. Karoline Leavitt had stepped into the spotlight, not just as a loyal soldier, but as someone Americans were starting to trust. While AOC kept raising her voice in the streets, Karoline stayed grounded, clear, steady, and unshaken. Because sometimes, it's not the loudest who win. Sometimes, the ones who stay calm are the ones who rise. In the final shot, the camera slowly zooms in on the front of the White House. Karoline's silhouette appears in the window, holding a cup of coffee, eyes locked on the horizon. And on screen, one final line fades in. "In the battle of voices, character always wins." Do you think Karoline Leavitt gave the right response? Or was AOC speaking the truth? Share your thoughts in the comments.